Wait, is Conrad Johnson pronounced to something I don't know?
Conrad Johnson.
No,
good
job.
job.
And I know
It's like,
Okay, but I mean,
all I can think of is like that software.
I figure you guys know what I'm
I need a more basic thing of this.
Yeah.
You watched that Road Launcher though, right?
Me and Alex
no, I gotta go. Yes. My brother's in all three minutes. He's going later.
Ready?
Ready to go? Okay.
See them assert yourself.
All right. All right. Hold it up. Hold it up. Are we live?
Yep, we're live.
We're live. Okay. Now I am formally presenting my friend and
That's camera.
sometime collaborator.
Is there a, do we see what? You want to,
Yeah, yeah.
usually people get freaked out when they can see themselves, so.
Go ahead. We'll talk later about Nazis. Screenplay, which someday will sell.
Yes.
We were upended by Quentin Tarantino, I think. But I think what's particularly interesting to a lot of people here, we have several people who are in UCB, and one of their dreams would be, if I can speak for you, is to go from here to SNL. And David was lucky enough to make that transition. And let's start off. I'd love you to tell them how it happened for you, what the time period was, what the group was when you got there, and whatever this is free form.
All right. Well, this will not the secret of my success. This part will not take long at all, and it's a little embarrassing because it involves nepotism. I've got to just face it. My brother worked at SNL in the '80s. I got to know a couple of the producers there, and in the '90s, I started writing sketches on my own, and for a number of years, teaching myself how to write. And I, in '96, got a batch of sketches to one of the producers I had met almost 10 years previous to that, and his name is Jim Downey, who's a terrific writer and producer. No longer with SNL, but he had been there for longer than anybody. I think he started in the mid-'70s and only retired maybe a year ago. Anyway, he read that batch of material and liked it enough to ask for more, and then that led to a round of interviews. And then 6 months later, after reviewing my material and interviews, then I got hired. But it would not have happened had my brother not worked there. And my brother plays another role in my career a little bit later, so I can't run away from that. In my defense, I will say that I got in the door because of him, but I've sold some stuff, more than one thing, on my own. USA bought a pilot that I wrote with a friend of mine that we thought was going to go as a series. We were very proud of it. But alas, it only aired as a TV movie. But it's about a secret agent, a very capable, very good secret agent, but he has the misfortune of not working for the CIA or Her Majesty's Secret Service. He works for the Canadian Secret Service, and they have no goddamn money, and so they.
She's okay.
Right. So yeah, he's the security CSIS. Right, exactly. So and so he's not flying like Bond. He's not staying at the Four Seasons and flying first class. He goes Greyhound basically, and he's staying at the Motel 6. So he's having to do the work of James Bond on $11 a day, basically saving the world on $11 a day. And it was called Underfunded, and we were very proud of it. But it did not go to series. They aired it as a TV movie, and then we were so proud of the premise, though, that a few years later we managed to get the rights back, and we got permission from Universal to try to set it up as a screenplay. And indeed, we sold it as a screenplay back to Universal with Ryan Reynolds attached. And this was when Ryan Reynolds, he's now hot again because of Deadpool. But it's he's had a sort of interesting career trajectory. When we sold it, he was hot because he had just come off of a movie he had made with Sandra Bullock. I can't think of the name.
The Proposal.
The Proposal. And he was hot for a little while. And then so we sold this script with him attached, and he would have been great as the lead. But then while we were writing the script for Universal, the Green Lantern happened. And so he was not quite as hot at that point. And then that kind of went away. But anyway, so we were maybe underfunded like the World War II script that Norman and I wrote. Maybe that will have its day in the sun at some point. So, but I was on Monk, which my brother created. I was on that show for 8 years. And
Talk a little bit about your experience at SNL, just what it was like.
It was my first job in show business, really. And literally 6 months before, what am I saying, 6 months? 2 months before I was in the room for the first time, I was working at a South Jersey bistro. I was just making salads. And it was the most, you get the bends practically going from where I was to where I ended up at SNL. And it was, again, my first job in show business. And it was still to this day the most harrowing experience. And it's very cutthroat there. Believe all the rumors. But the upside is I am now ready for anything. I could go to Iraq tomorrow if I had to. I am ready for anything because of my experience in that room. So it was, and I met some great people. I met some other people that perhaps I wouldn't classify as great, although almost everyone I met was very talented. I was there when Will Ferrell was there, and Tracy Morgan, Anna Gasteyer, Molly Shannon, and they're all enormously talented people. So I was there at that time. I guess you guys were. All of you were 3 when I was at SNL. So.
Yeah, our guys are like Kristen Wiig, Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, that group. Really?
Thank God I'm 3 years older than you guys.
At least when I started, I was watching those people.
Right. No, exactly. Every generation kind of has their own cast that they embrace, and then that becomes, they're the best cast. And then when that group, whoever that generation is 40, and their kids are talking about whatever, their parents are saying, no, they're not half as good as Will Ferrell and Molly Shannon, who of course were not half as good as Phil Hartman, who was nowhere near as good as John Belushi and Bill Murray. I mean, it's just every generation has their SNL cast that they like. So that was my first job.
But we have a room, we run a room here, and they write collaboratively,
Mm-hmm.
and what I tell them is that you got to learn to take a punch.
Right, that's a great metaphor.
And so, how many punches did you take? I mean,
Well,
how brutal was it?
I could fight Holyfield tomorrow, and it would be a walk in the park. It's just because it is. Well, this is how it works. In 30 seconds or less, SNL works this way. You show up on Monday and meet the host in Lorne Michaels' office. All the writers meet the host then. You arbitrarily Alec Baldwin. You meet him on Monday. And then you leave that office at arbitrarily, let's say 7 p.m., and then you are writing frantically for 2 days. And then on Wednesday, every script that the writers had generated is read out loud in a big room, and everyone crowds into that room. I mean, not just the writers, but all the technicians, the crew, they're all there. It's 90 or 100 people in this room, and every script, every sketch is read out loud. When I was there, it was 40 scripts were in the packet. And keep in mind, on a typical SNL episode, you're watching how many sketches? 8, 10? So 75% are going to get cut. And everybody wants their script, their sketch, or sketches.
Did you have to pitch the sketch?
No, when you meet the host, it's very interesting. People make a pretense almost of pitching an idea to the host, but nobody wants to, forgive the bluntness of the metaphor, blow their wad in the room when they're pitching the sketch. They want to kind of save the cool idea for when people hear it on Wednesday. So often you're hearing fake pitches, or you're hearing very vague pitches. Like you'll hear things like, I got an idea, Alec, for you would be a mechanic. And then you're not going to really maybe be more detailed than that. And sometimes that's real and sometimes it's fake, but you don't want to kind of give the goods away 2 days early. Because what you want in that room is laughter. On Wednesday, when those scripts are read out loud, you want laughter in the room. Now, when I was there, this was, again, you guys were very, very, very young. They were not doing as many concept sketches, which is what I like to write. And those are basically not recurring character sketches, but like Monty Python or Mr. Show type sketches where you don't have recurring characters. You just have a funny situation. But when I was there, they were all about recurring characters because Lorne Michaels was determined to spin every recurring character off into a movie. And he did. I mean, there were so many. There was A Night at the Roxbury. There was Ladies' Man. He was even dredging up the Coneheads from years before. They must have done 10 of these things. So they were all about recurring characters. So every episode of SNL, you would just see 6 or 7 characters that you would just see in the week before. And I didn't like writing them. They didn't interest me as much. I kind of, again, like Mr. Show type standalone sketches. So I perhaps maybe wasn't there at the right time. I understand they're now doing more. I haven't seen the show in a while. They're doing more of those concept type sketches now. Is that true or not true? So I was either born too early or too late. But anyway, so anyway, but it was a great experience and a harrowing experience. It was 10 things at once would be.
So you went off on, and Tuesdays just started, or Monday night you started
Exactly.
writing like crazy.
That's right. Yeah.
But nobody said, "Oh, that's great, do that."
I mean, occasionally, but usually not. Usually, you're not announcing to the host exactly what you want to do for them. Usually, unless it's something specialized, you want to make sure that they can do the French accent or something. If you know that what you're doing involves a certain thing.
How generous was the room on Wednesday?
It's all about. First of all, you guys, if you don't know this, you will, and Normie can tell you the story.
There are now one more person from UCB, so they.
Oh, and you guys all know that comedy writers are perhaps the worst audience for comedy. I mean, comedy writers are the most misanthropic. And Norman, by the way, is an exception. My brother is an exception. I like to think in some ways I'm an exception. I will actually laugh at something if it's fun. But comedy writers often, they can be otherwise very good people, but they're just surly, and it's just all about they're almost resenting you and there's a challenge like when you say I'd like to read you something funny, they're looking at you. They're beginning with this. They begin from this premise. You might be wasting my fucking time. I hope you're not wasting my fucking time. It's so they're not a great audience. And also at SNL on Wednesdays, everybody wants their thing to get on. So every time Bree, is that your name? If Bree gets a sketch on, the odds, if you're like, it's like card counting, the odds go down that you're going to get your thing on. There's that much fewer real estate available. So you're not rooting for Bree to get her thing on. It's a very strange and again harrowing environment. People do laugh if it is undeniably funny, which of course happens. I will tell you one quick anecdote about this. Is again, my brother plays into this. He was there in the '80s, but he would come back occasionally and do guest writing spots, for a week or two every year. And there was a sketch that Norm Macdonald fell in love with that my brother wrote, and Andy had written it years before, and it made it to the Wednesday read-through a number of times, 2 or 3 times, and but it never got to air because the room was divided in half on the sketch. Half the room was gasping for air on Wednesday; they could not breathe, and the other half, it was like the person reading the sketch may have been speaking Greek. They just didn't. And this was the sketch. I'll just give it to you in a half a minute. But to me, it's a very funny idea. The sketch was called Off Broadway. And Norm loved it, and he wanted to do it. And the premise was it was a fake TV show called like Drama Beat or something, some talk show about theater or Theater Beat or something. And the host was like, "Welcome to Theater Beat. Today we have Stan Harrison, one of the great premier actors of our time. He's been around a while. You worked, and Norm was that actor. You worked with Jason Robards, didn't you?" And then Norm goes, yeah, Jason and I, we did a play in early '61. It was an early Edward Albee thing. It wasn't a big play. It wasn't Broadway, that's for sure. It wasn't even off Broadway. It wasn't even off Broadway. It was more like off. And then, I kid you not, this went on, the off for 6 pages. It was just 4 minutes of Norm going off. And I could not, it was the kind of thing where at first you hear it and you're laughing like Norman is, and then after a minute, you're not laughing because, okay, now it's getting silly. But then after 3 minutes, it's just getting so absurd that you're just laughing again. So then it goes on for 4 or 5 minutes. off, off, and then it ends this way with Norm going off, 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 off Broadway. And then there's a beat, and then the host goes, "That's all the time we have today on Drama Beat. Join us next week." And so I thought it was maybe the funniest thing I'd ever read, and half the room was just, again, clutching themselves. The other half wasn't. So it was never got on the air. I still maintain it should. So anyway, that's Wednesday read-through.
Norm Macdonald had one of the funniest jokes of all time, on the ESPY Awards on ESPN.
Right.
He held up the Heisman Trophy and to an audience, and he said, "This is the greatest award in all of sports. Nothing touches this, and nobody can ever take this away from you unless you stab your wife and a waiter." And the audience, the collective jaw dropped. It was right after the OJ trial was on.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. He's a very, very brave guy.
He's a very brave guy and a very, very, very funny guy. One of the funniest people I've ever met, and also one of the strangest. He's a very, very weird guy, but incredibly funny. And that I think that whole OJ thing is one of the reasons he got fired. I think apparently Don Ohlmeyer was the head. Was he the head of NBC or something? Was pals with OJ and didn't like Norm Macdonald. Just busting on him every weekend, in every update.
He's looking for trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but that was.
Did you get some sketches on?
Yeah, I did. Not as many as I would have liked. The one that I was proudest of was actually Phil Hartman. I don't know if you guys even know who Phil Hartman is. Very gifted.
Look at some of the Phil Hartman before SNL was an extra on a series that I did. An extra. And he just chimed in from time to time. And it was called 6 O'Clock Follies.
Oh, okay. 1980 or something? 80.
Yeah. 1980, when my son was born. And he was so funny that we made him a recurring character.
Oh my gosh.
And then he got us.
You promoted an extra. That might be unprecedented.
No, he was. If you see any old, or just dial him up. He's got. What did he do? Newsroom or?
And he did Newsroom after SNL, and then I wasn't there when he was a regular on SNL, but he came back to host it when I was there, and this was a year or two. Speaking of, the OJ murders, Phil kind of died. It was a very grisly. He was slain by his
wife.
His wife, yeah. It's crazy, very sad story. Anyway, but he came back to host, and
what was your feeling after the? Because I would count this to them. When you see your work on the tube or on the screen. When
it's working, like the Phil Hartman thing. That was great. I mean, it was playing. It was working. When people are responding to the work, there's no better feeling. I'm not a stand-up comic, but stand-up comedians talk about how when people are just reacting, when you're getting those laughs, it's like it is a drug for them. When I was at SNL, a lot of the performers were stand-ups as well, and they were making good money as performers on SNL, but they loved to go back to Caroline's or whatever, just these local comedy clubs, and just do their thing. They just got something from that, and I'm sure if you guys are in Upright Citizens Brigade or Groundlings, it's the same feeling when it's working and the audience is responding. It is a high. It's a great feeling. But the opposite is true when you're playing to silence, when it's crickets. It's just the longest. 4 minutes passes like feels like hours.
I was especially interested in David coming because he gives you a perspective of both SNL and flat out sketch comedy, and then the segue to
unemployment. We talk about that. We talk about anything. Yeah.
When I met him, there was only one person. It was Dweezil Zappa
Right.
there was a room, I lived out down the street from Frank Zappa in the Hollywood Hills. And a friend of mine was doing a show with Dweezil and Moon Unit.
Right.
Those were Frank Zappa's kids, Mooney and Dweezil.
Right.
And they had a room where they would, when they were finished wearing their clothes, they would just throw their clothes into this room, dirty clothes, into this room. And then someone eventually would come in with a forklift and do the laundry.
Right.
David had as many white shirts sitting on his floor, I think, as Dweezil. That was my first.
They've all heard the rumors. They've all heard the gossip about my white shirts and how it compared to Dweezil Zappa's pile of laundry. We've all heard the rumors, Norman. No, I don't even.
But make the transition now to a series.
Well,
Series
after SNL, I met Norman Steinberg. Before we get to the series, very briefly, my first foray into screenwriting, which is my first. I like television a lot, and you could argue that we're in a golden age, and that TV is better than movies, and I think that's true because there's a lot of great writing in television, but also movies are not as good as they used to be because they're doing theme park rides, they're doing spectacles now, and that's all they're doing. But I fell in love. I got into I fell in love with script writing and storytelling because of the movies I saw more than the TV shows I watched. And Norman and I shared an agent, and Norman was looking for a couple of writers to collaborate on a adaptation of a British sex farce or political, the rape farce? Yeah. And this very successful producer named Andrew Vanya, who's done a lot of movies you guys have heard of. I think he did The Terminator 2, he did Basic Instinct, and a real kind of old Hollywood, and Rambo, right. Kind of an old Hollywood, he was this very smart, self-made, kind of tough Hungarian immigrant who just produced a lot of movies, some of them good, some of them not so good. And he had the rights to this British play, hired Norman to adapt it and make it American. So instead of it being set in the world of Parliament, it would be a sex farce set in Congress in D.C. And Norman had a lot of stuff on his plate and wanted to kind of knock it out fast, so we wanted to hire a couple of collaborators. And our agent that we had in common told Norman about me, and we got together, and Norman liked my take on the material. So he hired me, another fine writer named Chris Downey that Norman had known for a while, and the three of us worked on this movie, this screenplay, for several months, and that's where I met Norman. And I still maintain there was some good stuff. It's a funny screenplay. Probably not going to get made now that the producer is dead. I think Andrew died.
No. He's even richer than he was. He's in Hungary. He's in Budapest.
Andrew is still with us?
Yes, he is. And he owns.
Can we edit this tape? Is there any way to edit this? I never said that.
He owns casinos.
Could somebody Google Andrew Vanya, V-A-J-N-A? Is he really with us?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm just digging the hole deeper and deeper. Okay. But anyway, Andrew, if you're watching, I hope you like satire. That's all that was. The last 60 seconds was satire.
I'm sorry, V-A-U-G.
V-A-J. I think it's V-A-J-N-A.
Yeah, he looks good.
No, it's a great.
Oh man, now you're really rubbing salt on him. Not only is he alive, he looks better than ever. All right. So
And a
anyway,
very nice guy.
and a huge fan, obviously, of Norman's. And you should know Norman is, in addition to being a great writer, is a pretty modest guy. But so I will say that apparently, this is before I met Norman, Steven Spielberg once called Norman his favorite comedy writer. So
Never hired me.
well, his loss, definitely. And we've all seen 1941. We know what a loss that was to Spielberg. But anyway, so yeah, so that's where I met Norman. And then a couple years after that, my brother got a show on the air called Monk. Ask your parents and grandparents about Monk, because our demographic was middle-aged. But anyway.
I should interject that we actually had to do a post-production exercise with a scene from Monk, so we
Oh,
are kind of familiar.
where
with
was
it.
this? Where did you do this?
Post-production back at LAU's campuses. It's one of our segments.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Your teacher sounds like a very discerning man or woman. Woman, yeah, very discerning. They have a great faculty there, is what I think. So, but anyway, my brother got that show on the air, and I was I wasn't involved in the pilot, but I was involved with almost every episode thereafter. I say almost because I took half a season off to go do this pilot that I mentioned a little while ago called Underfunded that I really thought was going to go, but it didn't. So then I went back to marketing. So I was there for most of the 8 seasons that it was on. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm curious a little bit about SNL. Was much of your experience writing there collaborating with a performer writer, different performers, and I guess how is that experience? Like, are you trying to specifically write for them, write with them?
My experience, speaking for myself, the answer is no. But I should have done more of it. I was really writing, and this was a mistake I made, frankly. I was just kind of writing my own kind of concept-driven sketches, but I wasn't working usually with any of the performers. But most of the stuff that got on was stuff that writers had written in collaboration with the performers. And they were very performance-driven. They were very character-based, which again wasn't necessarily what I was into. But I should have made more of an effort because that was the currency then. That's what was getting on the air then. I don't know how it works now, but I would imagine that's still mostly the case. That there's still a close collaboration with most of the sketches between the writer and the performer. Not always, but often. And by the way, a lot of the performers that we had were also, and probably still the case now, were very good writers. Will Ferrell's a really good writer. Tim Meadows, who I don't know if you guys know who that is a funny, in a very restrained way, very funny actor, and he's also a terrific writer. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say that some of their favorite sketches were ones that didn't make it. Do you have one in particular that you're fond of, didn't go?
As it happens. There was one I wrote with Molly Shannon. I don't know if you guys know who that is. She's an enormously talented actress. And John Cleese was not the host that week, but he was doing a movie, or he had a movie coming out that week. And he did like a guest spot on the show. Parenthetically, that guest spot involved him doing, with Michael Palin, a sketch that they had originated on Monty Python, which was the Dead Parrot sketch, which is one of the most gaspingly funny sketches of all time. But this is what's interesting, and about how perishable comedy can be. They did it at SNL when I was there. They kind of redid it. They reprised it. It played to silence. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's just so funny, but that generation just wasn't responding to. But anyway, John Cleese was there that week, and I wrote a sketch that he appeared in. It got to dress, it did get on the air. The premise was Molly Shannon was on her deathbed in the beginning, and she's like 98 years old, and she has been a widow for the last like 79 years. But her beloved husband, died when she was 21, and she's never remarried. She's been faithful to his memory, and she's saying to the priest on her deathbed that she's happy that death is claiming her because she'll be reunited with Jeffrey. And then it dissolves, and it dissolves, and it fades up on heaven. There's ethereal, you've got the Hallelujah chorus, and it's clouds and everything, and there she is in heaven, and she's 97, but she's in heaven looking for Jeffrey, who died when he was like 22, buff, in his prime. And Norm Macdonald plays him, and he's playing in heaven, playing beach volleyball with these 6 hotties on a beach. And she comes up to him and says, "Jeffrey, we're fun together." And he doesn't really remember her. He goes, and she goes, "It's Alice." And he goes, "Oh, Alice, yeah, I remember you. Okay, here we go, my sir." He just kind of completely blows her off in heaven. And then the sketch ends with God coming up to Molly, who's devastated. John Cleese plays God and says, "Your husband's a bit of a git, isn't he?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "Would you like me to banish him to hell for you?" Like, "I'll do it." And she says, "That would be great." And then he just waves his hand, and you hear Norm screaming off camera as he's banished to the fires of hell for eternity. And it was John Cleese. I was very proud of it. Did not make it to air. So yes, the answer is there's always stuff that and Off Broadway, which my brother wrote, is one that should have been on, but there's really no telling what people will respond to. Yeah.
So in terms of just the day-to-day work life of the 2 main places we've worked at,
right,
do you generally think that, well, I know SNL has to be ready that week, and obviously, it takes some more time to flush out, and you have more time to flush out. but I'm just wondering, do you enjoy that collaborative environment or more than the sort of cutthroat everyone for themselves situation?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, SNL can be collaborative, but it's not. Monk was a much better working environment. I mean, it was SNL was arguably more valuable because I'm now prepared for almost anything. It was like Paris Island, but Monk was a much better working environment because it's a lot of it's about the showrunner, and Norman's worked with a lot of different writers and has run several writing rooms, and Norman's a great. I've never been on one of his shows, but I've worked with him, and he's been my boss on projects, and he's a great, as you guys know, boss. But the tone is set by the person in charge, and we've all heard the horror stories. I won't mention names, but there are showrunners, even very talented showrunners, who are very difficult to work for, and they impose a kind of climate that's sort of toxic, and it makes it hard to come to work, and it's tough to do your best work. And then there are the Norman Steinbergs, the Andy Breckmans. Apparently Phil Rosenthal has a great room, or had a great room on Raymond, where they set a great tone, and it's not toxic. I mean, it's always going to be difficult, but it shouldn't be any more difficult than it has to be. So it's all about the showrunner, and yes, it's a long way of saying the Monk experience was, my brother ran a great room. It wasn't saying that it was always sweetness and light every single day, but it was mostly a terrific experience, and it was a show we were all proud of. So.
But that also goes to performers, the actors who on the show. They come away saying, "What a great time we had! I love doing that show. I want to go back."
Right.
It really, the fish stinks from the head.
Oh yeah.
And depending on, and sometimes it's the actor, the lead actor. I mean, Tony Shalhoub wasn't what he is.
Right.
As a great performer.
Yeah.
And wonderful guy. Then there's Roseanne.
Right. Equally gifted, arguably, but a much more difficult personality, apparently.
Yeah, so you get luckier, But what was the situation? You had a writer's room on Monk, and it was about an 8-year run.
Yes, it was an 8-year run, and the way it worked is if for you guys who haven't seen Monk, and you can't maybe get your grandparents on the phone, I'll just it was a light mystery about a very eccentric detective. He had OCD, and he had a kind of a Dr. Watson, kind of a minder. The first few seasons, it was Biddy Schramm playing Sharona, and then later on he had Natalie, who was his minder, and he was brilliant but very eccentric, and we had a lot of comedy on the show, and so the room consisted of mystery people and comedy people. And we would outline the stories collectively, 16 stories per year. And we would outline those in the room, and then we would all go off, we would be assigned scripts. And we would write them either singly or with a partner. And then my brother would rewrite every script. And that's how a season of Monk was produced.
Did that alone?
Say again?
He did it alone?
Yes. He would rewrite every script would, as they say, go through his typewriter before it was produced. So, yeah, that was
How common is that of a practice to have like your brother was the showrunner,
right?
Creator, to have all of the scripts kind of go at the end right before they.
Great question. Norman would know. I know that there are other writers doing that. I suspect it's more common than not that they would at least take a pass at the script. Sometimes the rewrite is a light rewrite. Sometimes it's extensive. Typically with freelancers, the rewrite is more extensive because they just don't know the show as well as the staff writers do.
It depends upon your capacity. But Aaron Sorkin, sort of legendary, that he has a room full of people who come up with the stories, and then he writes everything. And
well, that's an extreme.
Yeah, and David Kelly. He did 2 shows at once. He was doing 2-hour shows at once and writing them both by hand. And which is extraordinary. But it depends on how meticulous you are. It's a case by case scenario, and how much some write. Well, Sorkin comes from the theater, and they don't want anybody touching their words. And I know one instance where somebody deigned to rewrite him on that show Sports Night, and he just went ballistic because you can't touch mine. He didn't even call them words. He said, "I composed the show." Okay, well, all right. But there are others who really trust their writers. I'm surprised. I thought Andy, well, that's an enormous job to rewrite every script.
Yeah. Now again, the rewrites were sometimes extensive, sometimes not. But yes, every script would go through his typewriter. So, for the viewer, they were getting a uniform voice, and that didn't really change for 8 years. So,
Other question?
I heard Dana Carvey tell a story one time that he would submit sketches just for the sole purpose of hearing Lauren read the stage direction. Like they were intentionally awful just to hear him do that. Did that ever happen?
I never did it because with Dana Carvey, he was there when, first of all, there were no restrictions on the number of sketches you could submit when he was there in the 80s. So you could write a sketch just for your own amusement like that.
Right.
But when I was there were so many writers at that time that the pile on Wednesdays was getting so mountainous that they were holding the newer writers like me to like 1.5 sketches. We could write one on our own and then one in collaboration with someone else. So I'm not going to waste my one shot.
Right.
I don't have a machine gun. In that case, you've got a musket. You've got one shot to make it good. I didn't want to waste it on this thing that would just amuse myself. I will say this. I heard a story about a sketch back in the 80s. Maybe it was the early 90s, before I was there. And Lorne, who read every sketch, he read the stage directions for every sketch. As Bree was doing with hers, Lorne read the stage directions for every sketch. And he would read the title of the sketch first, obviously, and then jump into the stage directions. And there was one sketch where he refused to say the title out loud. What was the name of that sketch? It was called, the name of the sketch was Lorne Michaels' Retarded Nephew. And the premise was, it was a very meta sketch. The premise was that, I think it opened with whoever, Phil Hartman or whatever, saying to Dana Carvey and the other actors, "Hey, bad news, Lorne just hired his retarded nephew as a writer, and we're going to be, and they're demanding that we do one of his sketches." Oh my God. And then you cut to them doing this sketch. And I forget which actor played Lorne's retarded nephew, but it was an insane sketch. I think it involved a cocktail party where everyone was holding a rake. That's right, indoors at the party, drinking champagne and holding a rake. It was a rake party, and it didn't make any sense. And everyone was kind of in the sketch, was looking very awkward. And then you would cut to the sidelines, and there's Lorne with the actor, I don't know who it was, playing his retarded nephew, and Lorne is scowling, but his retarded nephew is gasping for air. It's the funniest thing he's ever seen because he wrote it. So it only makes sense to him, and it's only funny to him. Lorne, of course, this never made it to air. Of course, it didn't get on the air. But Lorne refused to even read the title. And I think he very, 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 very reluctantly read the stage direction. Probably in a monotone, but again, I wasn't there.
Does he read stage directions?
Yeah, every Wednesday, this is 20 years ago, but I suspect he still does. But anyway, so again, that predates my involvement with SNL.
Let's go post monk. What? And now you're waiting for.
Well, after Monk, I sold that underfunded the movie to Universal. Cross your fingers that something happens with that. And another pilot to NBC that did not even get shot. Underfunded, got shot as a pilot. That was called Callaway. It's about a con man who goes to work for the feds. So those are the things that leap to mind after Monk. And then now I'm waiting on, all of us are waiting on a word from Lionsgate and ABC about a new show that my brother is involved in, that he did not create but was brought in to help develop. I can't talk too much about it, but it's about the one line, the log line is a handwriting analyst who's working with the NYPD. That old chestnut. We've all seen that a million times. So, and yes, a handwriting analyst in the digital age, when no one's actually signed their name since 1987. This is a handwriting analyst. So, but anyway, yeah.
When you were in the writer's room, what did you feel like your role was? Were there separate things?
I was Blanche Dubois. I've always depended on, no, I'm sorry, in terms of my,
So what you brought to the table?
what was my,
Like what you brought to the table?
Oh.
Was it like some of the people were better at other things?
that's a great question. Do you mean in the Monk writer's room?
Any writer's room?
I can speak with maybe more authority about Monk because I was just there a lot longer. That's a great question. There were people in that room that were really good at character stuff. They're very good at, some people I found, the dividing line is character and narrative, character and story. Some people are enormously good at story, and maybe their characterizations are a little bit weak, and other people are great with characters, but they're not great with plot, frankly. And sometimes some of them even have a lot of disdain for plot, like the word plot makes them angry. I don't know why, but that's the case. And I think I'm more of a story guy, frankly. I envy people that can really create clearly defined, unique characters with compelling voices.
What's your process in creating and developing a story?
Usually, I start with a premise first, and then the characters kind of come from that. But I like to start with a cool. I mean, this is kind of the only way I know how to work. Is I'll start with a cool premise, and a pilot I just wrote. I don't know what's going to happen with it. It was a spec pilot. It was simply this. You guys all know about Brian Williams, who lied his ass off and got caught doing it, and his career suffered greatly for it. I think, what was the lie he told? He was
He was in a helicopter.
right, exactly, and that wasn't the case at all. So I wrote a pilot about a year ago for an hour suspense show, and the premise I started with was, what if Brian Williams-like character, I think my guy was Ryan Harmony. What if he, like Brian Williams, got caught in a whopper of a lie? And this dude was on the fast track to be an anchor. I mean, had everything being served to him on a silver platter. It was going to be in the catbird seat. He was going to be Walter Cronkite. He was going to be Dan Rather. He was going to be that guy, and he blew it all because he lied about being in combat when he wasn't. So what if you had a character like that, like Brian Williams, and then he was disgraced and out of work, and his family left him, and he was devastated and desolate? And what if that guy, a year later, decided to become the guy he was only pretending to be before, to kind of redeem himself? What if he decided to be, perhaps recklessly, the bravest frickin' correspondent of all time, putting himself in harm's way to redeem himself? And every week he'd be doing just that. And it would be the adventure that he has, putting himself in very dangerous situations. Kind of a redemption story.
Richard Engel at NBC.
Oh, exactly right.
He's everywhere.
So very, very much like that. So Brian Williams becoming the guy he was merely pretending to be, and called harm's way. But I started with that what if? What if Brian Williams tried to redeem himself by becoming brave? That's kind of how I work. Starting with a premise, but everybody has.
What do you think, like, on the other side of that coin, what do you think holds the writer's room back?
Well, there's not any one I would say. I mean, there could be any number of things that make the room toxic, or.
Oh, yeah.
You've run any number of them and have been in them, way more than I. What can work against a writer's room? What can make a writer's room perhaps not function, I don't know,
Well,
He'd still.
Or like, how
But
about
the-
what could I as a human do that would hold a writer back? Like me, like do something at the table. That would
Oh, mistakes that writers make in the room.
We just an interpretation of something.
Well, do you want to speak to that? Like rookie
well,
mistakes?
I always speak to the cancer in the locker room. The one, there's always one person
Yeah,
who makes everybody crazy. And it's a person that you want to strangle.
right.
But I think more when the target becomes impossible. Like when I did a show with Ellen Burstyn, and she was impossible to please because she was afraid. She was scared of comedy.
Right.
And no matter what we did, she changed it to suit herself and basically destroyed all the comedy that might have been.
But she and she wasn't even in the room.
No.
I would say if you're gonna shoot down someone's idea, and some ideas need to be shot down. Let's face it, not every idea is good, but you want to spare the person's feelings. So instead of saying that's terrible for this reason, you can say that's cool, that's interesting, but what if it was this? One thing I would always kind of be mindful of, not just in a writer's room, but in any facet of the business, is know that people a lot of times have an emotional investment in their suggestion. And even executives who are not good at what you guys are good at, which is they're not creative usually. They can be enormously bright, but if they were really good writers, they'd be writing. But many executives want to feel like they're contributing to the writing process. So the last thing you want to do when an executive makes a suggestion is to just shoot them down, like skeet, just pull and bang, and then they go falling from the sky. You want to spare their feelings. Not necessarily lie directly, although sometimes, let's face it, there's an argument for that too. But you want to just know that people want to have an emotional investment. And by the way, the best way to get, there's no formula for this, but to get something on the air or get something going is to make the powers that be, the people that can green light your thing, feel emotionally invested. You want to make them feel like they're part of it. And when you're pitching, I would recommend that. When you're pitching, try to make them feel like they're part of the process. So if you're pitching something and this is arbitrary, and you're saying, and then of course the guy goes to the mechanic and he's told that his carburetor's shot, and then they could say, well, my God, what if it's the drivetrain or some other part of what if it's the distributor? If they say that, your job as a writer who's trying to get something on the air or sell something is to say, oh my God, that's great. Yes, that could, without kind of sounding too obvious about it. But it's a small change. It wouldn't make a big material difference to what you're pitching, but then that person then feels invested.
Yeah.
They are then emotionally on board. They're part of the thing.
Yeah.
They're not just a passive listener anymore. They're part of this thing. What Stephen E. D'Souza does, it's diabolical, is he deliberately will sometimes grow for a word that where there's only one word possible that can fill in that space, knowing the executive will jump in with that word. And then he can say, thank you, yes, exactly, that's what I'm talking about. And then moving on. So then that person is on board the train. They're feeling part of it. And they're patting themselves on the back because they helped out with a pitch. It's diabolical, but it's a psychological trick that gets people invested in your thing. When you're pitching, you do not want to just make it as Socratic as you can. Am I using that word correctly, by the way? As get a little bit of call and response going. Get them involved if you can. And then there's no guarantee anything's going to happen for you, but your odds do go up somewhat that they will want to buy your thing.
This is the life of a freelancer. We are all basically freelancers, and it's a very nice way to go. And when you're challenged by being out of work, as we all are from time to time, you'll come up with something. You will come up. I mean, he never stops, which is what I I've said to you so many times, this is, you have to write all the time, every day, and you gotta keep churning it because it's mileage, you're only gonna get better. And that's your challenge, is to get up with a purpose every day and do it when there's nothing else. I mean, if you get to a point where they start coming to you for help, like they'll come to David now, or his brother Andy even more often, because his reputation is somebody who's done it and they can trust him. And that's you need to get to that point. Yeah, go ahead.
Another question, if that's okay. What do you have like any methods or like tropes that you use to help break yourself out of like a block, or if you're having like difficulty like conceptualizing an idea or bringing it like out of your head onto the paper?
I'm not being smart. I'm not being a smartass.
That's fine.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Marathon showers for me. I'm not kidding.
I do that too.
Really? Yeah, I'm telling you. And I've read other writers do it. And I don't know why. I don't do drugs. Maybe I'd have more inspiration if I did. I don't know. I'm a lightweight when it comes to booze. I can't handle my booze. So marathon showers. And that works. It doesn't always work, but if I'm stuck on a story point, jump in the shower and I come out, and even if it doesn't work, I'm cleaner than when I was and I smell a little better, so whatever. But no, that seems to work. Yeah, I'm curious what, because you guys are, damn it, decades younger than me. What stuff are you guys watching in movies and TV? Drama, if any. Game of Thrones. Oh boy, you didn't even deliver it. Is that your favorite show?
Drama.
Yeah, a lot of people love that. Do you guys? What other three?
Good
What?
Way.
Say again.
Good Way.
Okay. Right, that's very well written. I've heard Game of Thrones is too, but I've never seen it. But people have recommended that to me. What do you?
Transparent. Homeland.
Is Homeland? By the way, I heard the first season was brilliant, and then I don't even know if it tapered off a little.
No,
Yeah.
not last year.
Oh, okay, so it
Last year
got
was-
better again.
Each season's like very different.
Okay. Okay, and these are all serialized shows. Well, actually, and yeah, Good Wife too. They have a standalone thing every week, although it's like 50% of the show.
Yeah.
I had a meeting at CBS years ago, and the woman there lied. She said, "No, Good Wife is like 80% standalone," and it's not. It's more. They're much more serialized. What do you?
I like Shameless on Showtime.
Is that a drama or a comedy? Is it a half hour? No.
It's a little bit of both.
Is it a half hour?
No, it's an hour.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Shameless with
Oh, yeah.
Bill Mason. I think Trailer Howard, who played Natalie, or maybe she wasn't on it. I don't know where Trailer landed, by the way. I'm sorry. What?
I like True Detective, Bloodline.
Did you like the second season of True Detective?
No, not that much. There's some interesting things, but yeah, not that much.
God, these are all serialized. That's where, when Norman and I were growing up, in the Pleistocene epoch, the TV was every episode was standalone. It was just beginning, middle, and end. And then the characters didn't change. They were exactly the same at the end as they were at the beginning. And it's like next week, the story meant that this week never happened. It was all anew. TV's really changed. Yeah,
Drama series?
Yeah, dramas.
I can't believe this is an anthology series, and I don't know what crime they're going to do, but The People versus O.J. Simpson, I thought was like some of the best TV I've seen in a long time.
Well, the next year, I understand they're doing his break-in to get his merchandise back, which will not be as good. And I don't know what they're going to do in year 3.
Casey Anthony?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It
no.
was just it was so great how they tackled
I've heard it's
race and sexism. It's amazing.
I've heard everyone's saying it's good. I at first, even though Cuba Gooding's a terrific actor, I didn't think he was great casting for OJ, but apparently he's doing a good job.
It's the least Ryan Murphy executive produced thing I've ever seen.
That's quite a rave. The least Ryan, what are we-
Well, I've been marathoning a show called iZombie this week.
Right.
So
I've heard it's
which
good.
is- Yeah, it's great. It's like kind of a procedural, but serialized, and of course with some supernatural elements.
Do they have a standalone story every week? Is there a standalone
Yeah,
procedural thing
They
they
do
do?
kind of like a standalone case every week, and then they kind of tie like a main season arc through it, kind of as a B story usually.
So how much time is devoted? If every episode's 43 minutes or whatever without commercials, how much time do they devote to the B story? Would you say 10 minutes?
Probably like 10,
Like
15.
I'd say 15, 20, depending on the
Oh,
episode.
wow.
Some episodes are even heavier.
So about half the show is the, well, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it gets heavier also towards the end of the season.
Wow.
A lot of CW shows are like that though, especially like the superhero.
Like Arrow is that way? Wow.
Arrow, Flash.
And I've seen The Flash a couple times. It's very well done. I've never seen Arrow. I've heard it's very good.
How about Archer?
I've heard it's very fun. Yeah, I haven't actually watched a television show since Columbo in 1970. No, I'm kidding. I got to watch more. I've got to watch more TV. Yeah, I know, yeah, exactly. I've got to watch more TV. What about you?
I haven't really been into like any TV dramas that are on these days, except for like the big productions like Game of Thrones.
And Monk reruns naturally,
Well, I
but go
mean,
ahead.
like,
Yeah.
I just watch trash, honestly. Like I like to watch TV to smile and just laugh. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just like be happy. So like I mean I like drama. I would say I was more of a dramatic writer than I am a comedy writer.
Right.
But like I honestly can't really think of like any like because a lot of the dramas they have going on TV right now they're very
Dark.
and slow.
Right.
Like, I like slow movies, but I know there's an end. Do you know what I mean?
Do you guys? And I want to get to the rest of you guys too. But do you guys prefer? You mentioned movies. Do you guys prefer movies to TV, or do you prefer TV to movies?
I prefer movies to TV.
I might be with you, but although not current movies, because I don't like most current movies. But
Well,
why do you
I'm
prefer
mostly
movies?
watching a lot of independent Oscar bait movies. Like fall is like my summer season. I'll be crazy.
Okay.
I'll go to
Okay.
festivals and watching
Right.
all that stuff.
Why do you think you prefer movies to TV?
It's probably just the way I was trained. I did film history for 3 years.
Right.
But most of my life as a kid was raised on watching movies over television. So I'm more familiar with a bunch of movies and stories, and I feel like as an artist, I understand the structure more of writing a screenplay than I do writing a television series.
Getting a whole story with a beginning, middle, and end in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Which you don't. I'm sorry.
And and I'll argue that like characters, I think that's from TV. 'Cause
Yes.
it's characters who deliver them.
Exactly right. But the story goes on and on and on and on.
Those
I
ones
would.
are smart about the natural progression of it. Like that's an exciting thing. That's not like a
I know.
just being repetitive.
But you're happy with that.
Yeah, I'm happy as long as like the twists and the turns follow like a path that's logical and like I stay with them on the journey because like if it starts to get crazy like Lost, I just like back out.
Well, that's what I heard about Lost. Although I guess for me is first, and what is your favorite? And then I want to hear yours. What is your favorite drama or that you're watching?
Currently running?
Yeah,
Jessica Jones, House of Cards, that kind of stuff.
I've heard it's great.
Yeah.
And I do like Daredevil as well.
First season, yes.
Oh, the second season's not as good. Oh, really? Is that the consensus here? Wow.
That's what I heard.
Like, do you wish you were blind like Matt Murdock when you're watching the second season of Daredevil?
No, I just
No.
wish that someone had fixed like small
envy them
problems
instead,
that
yeah.
added up.
Okay. I think maybe I have heard that. What about you?
Mine's House of Cards.
All 3 seasons of it?
The first 2 especially.
Right.
The third one, and I haven't seen the fourth one yet, but the third one it is good.
It's very
good.
The
Oh,
fourth
right.
one is
Oh,
much better than third.
That's super exciting. Then.
Like
Okay.
third too.
Yeah, House of Cards is my favorite.
And people rave about that. What about you?
Better Call Saul.
They're both old.
Better Call Saul.
I saw the first. I liked it. I saw like the first 5 of season 1, and I thought it was really well done. And that's got comedy in it too, because of Bob Odenkirk's really funny. I would argue what's interesting to me about the state of drama right now is that you can't get the great unless it's an indie movie, but that's a different kind of animal altogether. But if you want just like a mid-budget genre movie like Chinatown, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen Chinatown.
Go on.
Wait, what? Wait, no. Now I'm sorry. Now you have to tell me what.
We wrote a collaborative.
Yeah,
You
mine
are,
tastes
and-
Peter tastes.
Norman wanted us to model it after Chinatown,
Oh.
so we've heard.
No,
Oh, really?
I didn't want you to model it. I think it was, there's one person in this room.
Yeah.
Who I will not.
Was it the
mention.
one who was covering her head just a
Who
moment
will
ago?
not-
Yeah.
Who I will not
Yeah,
mention.
yeah.
Who one day just said Chinatown's a piece of shit.
Was it? Was it
No,
you?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you.
No, I'm not gonna say.
Wait. First of all, it's fine. You're all
Yeah.
entitled to your opinion, however wrong-headed it might be. But Chinatown, a piece of shit. I mean, I don't. What do you guys think of Hamlet? Thumbs down. Crap-ola. I mean, really? Okay. I mean, but okay. So you guys have.
He's the wrong guy.
So you guys have had your fill of Chinatown. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Even
Just
the
enough to
fans,
swear.
I totally get it. I'm a fan. Sorry, I'll go out on a big limb and say I think it's a good movie. But anyway, what movies like that and Casablanca? I hope you guys don't. Tell a great story in 2 hours, beginning, middle, and end, with characters you've never seen before and will never see again. If you want that, you don't have that experience now. You've got, unless it's a superhero movie. But if it's not that, and it's not like a Weinstein Company, grungy, indie, shaky cam, the tweaker and the transsexual nun in the car on the road trip on a voyage of discovery for $100,000, like a really low budget grungy movie, which is fine, but that's its own thing. But the mid-budget genre story doesn't exist now. If you want to see something like that, like True Detective, it's 8 hours. Or Jessica Jones, it's 10 hours. Or Breaking Bad,
What about Fargo? Fargo?
Great.
Pretty damn great.
Great, but how long is each story? How long is each story?
12 hours.
10.
12 or
8, 10.
Exactly. But if you want I'll use the C word, Chinatown. That's the last time I'll say it. If you want that experience of a great story in concentrated form, 2 hours, where do you go? Well, Turner Classic Movies and the DVD shelf, but no one's making, that's what I think is lost now. Fargo is brilliant, Breaking Bad is brilliant. These are long form, we're stretching the taffy. Slow burn, Bloodline, slow burn. Sometimes I would argue a little too slow. And so you've got that, and it could be beautifully done.
Would you see yourself doing one of those?
Yes, because that's where the market is now. But I guess what I'm saying is I regret that we don't have the option of both. I wish there was both.
But that's the premise here, is that this is, let's say, pre-professional.
Right.
Where are they going to work?
You're exactly right.
Where are they going to
Every show now, and probably for the foreseeable future, is serialized and is doing. And the good news is, you guys love all those shows. So you'd be writing to your strengths and to your passion. I'm just talking as a middle-aged guy. I regret that there isn't the option of both. If you go into a bookstore, not that there's any of those left, but if you can find a Barnes & Noble and you go in, there's something for everybody. There's science fiction and romance and nonfiction and literature and mysteries. But with television, you only have attenuated, long form storytelling. That's all that exists now. And I wish there was as much variety in that world as there is in music. There's people here that like rock and roll and rap and reggae and classical. That variety does not exist in television. Right now, it's mostly dark, long form serialized shows, mostly. But the good news is that's every show practically that you mentioned fits that mold. So you guys are in a good place.
Yeah. This is practical.
Totally.
Practical.
Yeah.
These are careers, and you can do what you like doing. What we'd all love to do is see it 70 times larger than life.
Right.
But that's a long, hard road, and
Doesn't exist. That world barely exists now. But I would like to. I was thinking about this before, it's a little theory of mine, and I don't know if it holds water. But I maintain, even though long-form television is better now than it's ever been before. Breaking Bad is magnificent. Sopranos was great. I never saw The Wire, but everything I've heard is arguably the best thing on TV, or one of them. Amazing stuff on TV. But my little theory is, comedy's an exception, but for drama, my little theory is that movies resonate more. And my little proof, we'll see how long this lasts, but my little proof is that you can remember scenes, specific scenes from movies more vividly than you can specific scenes from your favorite long form.
I hate saying this because we're of the same.
Yeah.
This is a different generation.
Well, let's see. Has anybody here seen? What's your favorite? I'm going to pick someone at random. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh God, probably Forrest Gump.
Okay, just tell me 5 scenes from Forrest Gump. 5 specific scenes.
Okay.
Go.
All right, when he gets like the dirt or the shit in his face. And
Got it. Go 1. What's 2?
The second is when Lieutenant Dan jumps in the water with no legs.
Right. Gary Sinise in the water with no legs. That's 2.
Yeah.
What's 3?
When Jenny's running through the fountain.
The classic Fountain Jenny scene. What's 4?
When Jenny's throwing rocks at her old house.
The Jenny Rock house scene. Right. And what's 5?
When like Forrest gets like shot in the butt.
Okay,
he's
that's
like,
5 scenes that you remember from a 20-year-old movie that's 2 hours long. What's your favorite serialized TV show? Drama.
I mean, do you count Shameless? I mean, it's kind of both. I think it's dramatic.
But is it serialized?
I think so, yeah.
You're gonna, okay. I'm guessing.
I also like.
Do you watch Breaking Bad? Have you seen Breaking
Yeah,
Bad?
I watched Breaking
Were you a fan of it?
Yeah, I was a fan.
5 scenes from Breaking Bad, which I remind you, unlike Forrest Gump, went for 50 hours, not 2. 5 scenes out of 50 hours. Go ahead.
Okay,
Specific
when
scenes.
he's in his underwear.
Right, in the opening, in the
The
pilot.
opening.
Yeah.
The pilot.
Okay, which was real. That doesn't even count. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And let's take finales off the table too, like The Sopranos. Everybody remembers the ambiguous ending. Who gives a shit? But just
Okay,
between the first hour and the last hour,
when
the
he,
other 48 hours sandwiched in between there. 5 scenes from Breaking Bad.
okay, when he finds the when he accidentally like lets the girl drown. In
Classic accidentally
Yeah.
drowning thing. Yeah, 1.
When Walt when
It's harder.
It's harder.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is. I do not know why it is. But movies seem to, not that they're better, although I think the best movies are better than the best TV shows. Sorry, guys. But there's brilliant TV, though. Movies seem to make more of an impression, a more indelible impression when they're great. I don't know why. Yeah.
It's easy to watch them over and over again. Whereas like
Now you're fucking up my theory.
It's a more commitment.
Damn it.
to
Now
watch
you gotta
Breaking
edit
Bad.
that out of the tape, too. You never said that. No, you might be right about that. Yeah.
I think about the gap for the type of dramas that you're talking about
Yeah.
that are in movies. It's the mirror. Like, people can only stand to look at the mirror that's reflecting back at themselves for their real life for so long. Do you know what I mean? So just like a drama, like you think like Mad Men. You know what I mean? That's, I think it's close to what you're trying to talk about. It stars, yeah, but it's still real life reflected as it is without much.
But you don't think that the best movie dramas do that, too?
They do, but it's shorter. You know what I mean? So you want to watch it. You know what I mean?
You mean it's easier to watch it over and over?
Or it's just easy to, want to watch it.
It's more palatable.
Yeah, it's more palatable.
Yeah.
I'll argue
In a
that
movie, though, so much more money and effort and time goes into each hour than in a TV show.
that's why I'll
Then in-
argue
then
that
in-
Mad Men specifically, each
then in your
episode is
Game of
so
Thrones,
dense
I mean,
that you
that's
can have a whole
movie every
class
week.
discussion about each episode of Mad Men.
But what's your favorite movie? If you had to pick one drama, that's your favorite movie. And we won't go through the 5 favorite scenes. I'm just
Big
curious.
Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, or my favorite, obviously. But I mean, those are comedies. But drama, your favorite drama.
Drama?
Besides Chinatown, I know that's your favorite. Everybody's favorite. Besides Chinatown.
I don't even know if I have a favorite dramatic movie.
Really?
The Godfather. It's just
Okay, but I mean, I would argue with The Godfather, again, it's not 2 hours like Forrest Gump, but about 3 hours. But there are just indelible, and it might be a function of what you're saying, you've seen it over and over again. These indelible scenes from 3 hours, not 50. Sonny, that's James Caan's character, getting mowed down at the toll booth or whatever, and the horse's head, and Al Pacino saying to Kay in the beginning, talking about Luca Brasi. Do you guys remember that great thing about either in 1 minute your brains or your signature are going to be on the contract? Specific scenes that you just remember. I don't know why they're more indelible. That's maybe why I love
I think it's
film.
more condensed. Like one of the things I like about TV is that it's more lived in, but it doesn't mean that these moments don't exist in it. Like Game of Thrones, like you could list like a whole bunch of moments that like really stuck with that fandom because like they're very exciting moments. They've changed like the course of the show and all that kind of stuff. Like they sort of get seared into people's brains. But in between that, you have like 9 hours of politics and people trying to maneuver and all that kind of stuff. It's more lived in, so it feels like you come upon those moments not more naturally, but like with more like breathing room attached to it. Whereas like a film, everything is so. Every line has to be so.
I know it's
vetted,
like in cooking. This is not a great analogy, but it's like a reduction almost.
Yeah.
Everything's. The other thing that I regret, and again, there's great TV, is what you get with a great movie is an ending. An ending's a great ending, not a good ending. We've all seen good endings, but great endings are rare. Resonate. They fucking haunt you, and they make you rethink everything you've just seen. With TV, that's harder to do. And I think a lot of times because they're coming up with the ending on the fly. You guys probably know more about Lost than I do. My understanding is they didn't even know how Lost, when they sat down to write the pilot, they had no idea how Lost was going to end. They just didn't know.
No, you're talking about arcs.
Right, exactly.
Of arc is part of it. But that's the part of that is business.
Right.
And part of it is just the evolution
right.
of this medium. That's what people forever want to hear these soap operas.
Yeah,
Soap
I agree.
operas go for
They go for it.
40
They never end.
They never.
But when you say that your favorite stories, and I'm talking now about novels as well as movies and TV shows, your favorite stories, think about the best novels you've read. Isn't there something about the ending that haunts you? And I find that if there's one thing that serialized television doesn't do as well as novels and film, if there's one thing, there's things that it does do as well, characterization, there's things that it does do as well. But if there's one thing it can't do quite as well is come up with a really resonant, haunting, and yeah.
However, I would argue Breaking Bad may be the exception because that ending is.
By the way, you know what? I've heard, I love it. I'm up to season 2. I'm not making a joke. Don't blow the ending for me. But I've heard it's amazing. I'm glad they did a good job. I'm glad they did a great job with it.
I would agree with that, but I don't think it resonates as much as, say, like the end of Usual Suspects.
Right, exactly right. It's for whatever reason, maybe it's that movies are in a compressed form. Maybe Aristotle had a, yeah, go ahead.
I agree also. Like, I think in How I Met Your Mother, they came up with the ending like at the beginning. And then like the show changed.
Yeah.
And then the show changed, and then the ending was like so weird.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? Like it was weird.
You can't
Well,
write
it's
to the
comedy,
ending as
too.
much on TV because
You're right.
the show's going to change. over
Like
time.
Norma was saying, it's mostly about the business. Yeah.
I heard Will Smith say this too, that like movies are like an event. Like you go for the sole purpose of watching it. Like you get dressed up, go to the movie theater, all
Right.
that stuff. You're TV, like you're sitting at home in your underwear on the couch watching it. So maybe the way you see it makes certain things resonate more and certain things not.
I mean, the way you see it in your underwear makes it resonate more. I'm not following you.
No,
I'm
like
not-
you're more relaxed and stuff.
No, I get. No, you're right. That's a valid argument too.
I think movies have become less of an event too. That's part of why like they have to like have the big tentpole things.
Oh my
be
God.
The only thing.
They so changed.
Or like really like lower budget, like this is very serious art kind of film.
Exactly. It's those two polarities exist, but it's what's in between that has gotten lost. Absolutely.
There's also
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my
Just
God.
the notion
It's pretty
that
fun.
you could keep watching the same genre over and over again, though, in movies is not necessarily going to be viable in like this evolving market. I mean, you use the example of Chinatown, and there have been hundreds of these detective noir movies that now, anytime something like that comes out, it has to be some combination of genres or some variation or like satire of some kind, and that's the way that it resonates with people. And I think that in order to go back to these simple genres, you really have to have them be out of the way for a while for them to come back into.
Oh, well, you're being honest. You're saying they will come back
Well, yeah, I mean, everything I think is cyclical, just in terms of what people are into.
from your lips. And you could argue that they're still into detective stories, but like with True Detective, it's now they want to see an extended story, an attenuated story. And I've heard Jessica Jones. I haven't seen it. I heard it's really well done. Is pretty much a noir thing. It's a detective story. But she can lift a Buick is the difference. That, is what differentiates her from Sam
And
Spade.
she keeps her nose. Just
And exactly right. Those two things. Anyway, so
he has to go back to Jersey.
for my sins. Okay.
David Breckman.
Thank you.
That was great. We are